In the previous video, I spoke about building out a overnight context curation agent that effectively allows for your personal AI assistant to be sustaining its context independently. We built out a few skills which agents would invoke in the workflow. And over the past couple of days, I have been testing and ensuring that the outputs have been of quality. And I'm happy to say that after a few rounds of iterations, fixing minor things in each skill.md, we're at a position from which we can complete the entire build by wiring up all of the different pieces of the puzzle. And this should be a really good summary video for you to get a sense around how all of these things work together. Okay, so just a bit of a recap on what we built. This is a diagram that shows what was built in a different way. We had a session wrap agent or a skill that acted to write into a daily session log. We also had a meeting notes reviewer that would review all the meeting notes from the day itself. And all of that is ingested. Your session logs, your daily session logs, and your meeting notes are ingested, along with the journal note is ingested by an overnight context curator agent. And what this overnight context curator agent does is it writes into three main areas. One being a summary of the day, which takes into account what you worked on, the conversations that you've had, your reflections to create a daily summary. It writes patterns about me as a person, right? The entire idea of a personal AI assistant is that it's personal to you. So a key piece of the puzzle is that it understands how you behave, and the best way to track that over time isn't for you to communicate it, but is for it to observe you as you work. So that's a collection of patterns that then gets written into a patterns.md. Over the weekend, I have created a separate workflow, a very simple workflow to just refine that into the most durable facts about me. And that creates the sean-behavior.md. And this refinement happens on a weekly basis when I do my weekly reviews. So this is automated as well. But yeah, an additional step here to make sure that we don't overload the context window with too much content. So it needs to be refined. Then finally, it writes into each project's memory.md file. And yeah, this is project specific. So if you have 5 different projects, it will write 5 different project memories. So this captures things like decisions that have been made, learnings that's been gathered, so that the next time you attack the project, it has all of those learnings embedded inside, so you're not making same mistakes and you're edging forward. So how does all of these things wire together? Because at the end of the day, we've got agents, we've got MD files here, and essentially how all these ties together is by using a function within Claude Code called hooks, right? Hooks are basically automations within the Claude Code harness that you can programmatically add at the start of a session and at the end of a session to then create those loops. There are a variety of hooks. There is a stop hook, there is a pre-tool usage hook, there's a post-tool usage hook. So you can go onto the Anthropic website, see their documentation around hooks. For me, the 2 hooks that I'm using to make this context engine work would be the session start hook and the session end hook. And the 2 parts here to show would be at the end of every session hook, it runs the session wrap agent. Specifically, the setup that I have is one where it runs the session wrap agent headlessly. So what it does is it runs a command on Claude-P, and then it has a a script that's written that uses the session wrap to wrap up each session. And then there is a session start hook. This one is a lot easier. All it does is at the start of every session, it tells Claude to load these documents that I have linked here. Yeah. And a bit of design questions around what we've built here. The first one is to ingest the daily session log as it's being written throughout the day. This allows for you to track things that are happening, the different sessions that has happened before during the day itself. This is not going to be as rich as the daily summary, but it gives your personal AI assistants context about what was worked on in the previous session on the day itself. Then the second thing that we're looking to add to the session start hook is the daily summary. And the way I'm thinking about this is to hook load the past 2 days daily summary. So this would be yesterday and the day before. Again, giving the agent persistent memory because it will then know what the past 48 hours and more has been all about. Now, over time, I might either increase this to 3 days or might even decrease it to 1 day. The question becomes how valuable is that additional day, and that will decide whether I add more or remove. Then we've got the seanbehavior.md. So this is about tuning it to understand me better so it can support me better. And then finally, when it comes to project memory, I alluded to this in the previous video, but we're not needing to load this at the start of every session. You'll notice that this is more about persistent memory on what's been worked on in the previous sessions, how the previous days have gone, what my energy levels are. All that will be part of daily summary. And then the behaviors is durable patterns of how I act, which is valuable in every session because it allows for Alfred, my personal AI assistant, to support me better. Whereas for projects, it's only relevant if I'm working on that project during that session, so it will be invoked as needed. Ultimately, what this comes up to be is, or rather, if we're gonna redesign what I just showed you in this diagram here, is basically creating a loop. And I've articulated more than what's over here because there are certain things that I've already wired up in my system. So for example, there is a Sean profile MD, and this is the facts about me, right? So date of birth, the closer people around me. So this doesn't really get updated at all. The behaviors is the one that gets updated over time. So I'm splitting these two documents so that the context engine can update this one more frequently, and then it doesn't really touch this at all. Tools index is just all the repository of the different scripts, MCPs, and whatnot, and any instructions that it may need to understand to use the tools that it's been given. And then this is where I was talking about during the session start, I want to add the daily session log, the daily summary, which is the past 2 days. System loaded by default would be Claude.md and the output style.md. And then as the session goes on and we're doing things, potentially we might need to load project context because I start working on a project, for example. That's when the project memory gets loaded as needed. And then once you're done with the session, it ends, and then the session wrap runs a headless agent to document everything in the background. So that's your daily session log that then gets created and or written into, that then gets refined and then updated into the more permanent context documents like patterns.md, projectmemory.md, dailysummary.md, that's the writes, the things that it's writing to, and then re-ingested in the next session to then create that stateful personal AI assistant that we all are looking for. So yeah, that's basically to wrap up the previous session. The next part of this video would be to show you an example of how I will be wiring a bunch of these things up that I have not yet wired up So for example, I've not wired up these daily sessions into my session start hook, as well as the Sean behaviors.md. So these are the new things that I will need to update my session start hook to include. This part has already been built. I had it from before, so all I did was I swapped out the session wrap agent from V0 to V1. So this one is done. What I need to do is I need to set these ones up. This is already done as well. Basically, I've got a project-memory.md for each project I have live. The system has just basically been upgraded in terms of writing these better and in an automated way. And then the final thing that I will need to do before I jump onto it is to convert this overnight context curator into a cron job. At the moment, I am manually invoking the skill because I've been testing it over the past couple of days. But what I will be showing you in the next 5 to 10 minutes is setting this up as a cron job at 2 a.m. every single day. All right? Cool. Okay. I would like to add a couple more documents to my session start hook. First of all, I want you to load Sean-behaviors.md as part of the session start hook. And the second is I would like for you to load daily session log.md for today, meaning to say the current date today, and then daily summary.md for yesterday and the day before yesterday. So these need to be dynamic, meaning to say that for tomorrow, the daily session log should be what gets loaded is the daily session log for tomorrow. And then for daily summaries, it will load today's daily summary and yesterday's daily summary. Does this make sense? When it comes to adding a lot of these features to Claude Code, you can ask it to do it for you. So I am not familiar with the design of sessionstart.sh. So a lot of everything here has been written by Alfred himself, right? And you can then see its intention is matching my brief to it. The only thing right now is to then see how it's being written today. So it's got that today. And then this is yesterday. And then this is day before. So I think these conventions should work. We will test it in a second session after this. So it's verifying it as well, which is good. All working. Here's what changed. One thing to flag, so this adds meaningful token load at session start. The behavior file, session log plus 2 summaries could be substantial depending on how dense those days were. Worth noting whether it impacts context window on longer sessions. If it does, we could truncate or load summaries in compressed form. So there are options for us to be loading a lot of this in a more compressed format, but we will get to that if it becomes a problem. The good thing right now is that Anthropic has increased the context window to 1 million. So that's 5 times more context window than what we had before. And at the same time, MCPs have become extremely efficient, meaning to say they don't load the entire tool list into session start. So that gives us a lot of headroom to be playing a lot more with what we have here. And that's why I've waited a while for us to deploy these optimizations. But the idea right now is with that additional context window, we should be able to harness that by adding these things to give Alfred a higher level of awareness around what is happening and what has been happening. So this is good. Let's test it out. And I'm just going to say, hi, can you tell me what context has been loaded in this session? So what will happen is the session start hook will fire, and then it will load all of the different documents. And you can tell right now, today is the 24th. It's loaded the 23 and the 22nd of March. So that's yesterday cross-domain summary, day before yesterday's summary. And then at the system level, you've got Claude.md, memory.md. So I think everything here is consistent with what I've shown you over here. And again, giving it persistent memory only eats up about 4% of its overall context window. So I think it's worth it. Obviously, we've got to test out a bit more in the days to come, the weeks to come, to see if maybe we would expand this one more day. Then that gives us more than half a week worth of context for it to remember. And yeah, so that's the session start hook. That's the loop completed. We've got the session start hook, the session end hook, that's done. And then now the last thing I need to do is to set up the cron job for the overnight context curator. I would like for you to help me set up a cron job for 2 a.m. every night or early morning to be running the overnight context curator, the skill, headlessly. So that's using the -p flag. Very similar to how we run the session wrap, as opposed to using a hook. I want you to run it as a cron job instead, and it should be running the overnight context curator. The purpose for what we're trying to do here is for the skill to run autonomously when I sleep every night at 2 a.m. And what it should be doing is reviewing the previous day, because what would have happened is at 2 a.m. you are already into the next day, so the instructions need to point towards reviewing the previous day. So currently it's 1:22 p.m. on a Tuesday. The overnight context curator should run at 2 a.m. tomorrow to then review today and basically update all of the context documents for today. Let me know if this makes sense, and if it doesn't, you can ask me any clarifying questions. Yep, so makes complete sense. At 2 a.m. on March 25th, it reviews March 24th. Let me look at existing patterns, how session wrap runs headlessly, and what overnight curator expects. So Claude Code's really good in scanning and reading all the stuff that is important to it, right? So it's searching the important files first. You'll read the relevant ones to then get that clear picture. And then very simply what it does is it will then give you the plan of what it will be executing. Simple shell script. Okay, so it's gonna run Claude with the print flag and the dangerously skip permissions, and it's gonna be opus, compute yesterday's date since it runs at 2 a.m. Pass it as the target date, cron entry 02 star with output logging. And two things to confirm. First, model session wrap uses opus. Let's use opus. And secondly, logging is great for the debugging. Proceed. And basically you say proceed. So what's going to do right now is just going to build that out for me. And yeah, fairly simple to do. Once this is done, we would have completed the project around creating the self-sustaining context engine that then allows for my personal AI assistant to basically have this loop where every session is stateful. And yeah, hopefully this has been helpful for you. Let me know what you think in the comments.